Hi, I'm Miss Chris.
And I'm Miss Hope.
Today we'll be making spooky snacks for Halloween. I will be making rotten deviled eggs.
And I will be making Rice Krispie Treat brains.
So let's get started. For our deviled eggs, we need 9 eggs, mayo, mustard, food coloring, Worcestershire sauce, poppy seeds, paprika, vinegar, and water. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to put all of our eggs into a pot, cover it to about over an inch of the top of the eggs with cold water. Put the lid on it, and then we're going to bring it to a boil. Now that our cauldron is boiling, we're going to turn off the heat and move it off the burner to let it continue to cook for 12 minutes until it is a thoroughly hard-boiled egg. Now that our eggs have cooked for 10 to 12 minutes, we are going to scoop them out and put them into a bowl of ice water. This is going to thermal shock them to make it easier for them to peel. The reason we didn't boil them the whole 10 minutes and just took it off the heat to simmer is because that prevents that green sulfur line from forming, or at least decreases the likelihood if you just cook them for less time. It also does that, but we're using a firm hard-boiled egg, so that way we don't have that green line. Although we're going to make them spooky and rotten, so it's okay. Alright, now that our eggs have set and they are cool enough to handle, we are going to dye them. But we want the egg themselves to be shown as what's dyed, not just the shell, because we're not going to have the shells on them when we serve them. So the first thing we're going to do, though, is make black food dye. And since I was unable to find black food dye, even though it's almost Halloween, we're going to make it. So if you remember your color wheel from kindergarten, if you mix all the colors, you get black. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to start with a splash of vinegar, just like if you're dyeing Easter eggs. And because you're not cooking with it, you can kind of measure with your heart. Actually, deviled eggs, you can pretty much just measure the whole thing with your heart. Because you're not cooking it, so the only part you cook is boiling. So we're going to add some red, some green, yellow, blue, and then we're going to start with our spoon. Like a murky green, perfectly rotten looking, but we're going to kind of cut off the green by adding some red. It'll hopefully bring it darker, and some yellow. And you can see it's turning kind of more of a brown. So it's like a good, gross, funky color. I think we're gonna make it a little bit, a scooch more, so it's not too gross, because you do want to eat them. That blue. So it should be nice and dark. And we're gonna add some water to it. You want to be able to submerge your eggs. And we're just using the water we used to shock the eggs. And now, so that we've done the egg whites and not just the shell, because we're gonna peel that off, you're gonna take it and you're gonna crunch it. So you have some broken shell. A little less aggressive than that. I went real hard. And you're gonna pop it in there, and it's gonna go through the cracks and dye your egg. So gently tap it so you have some nice spider webbing, spooky and creepy. And just pop your eggs in. There with each one. And each one's gonna be different because you're breaking them differently. All right, and we're gonna let them sit for about 5 minutes because we really want that dye to soak in through the shell cracks and dye the yolk, not the yolk, the whites. And then once that's done, we're gonna start making them all fancy. So our eggs have been sitting, so we're gonna start peeling them. We're gonna fish this one out. And we have some creepy crackling, not as much as we like, so you can either just have like a delicate crackle, or you can pop them into the dye itself and then dye the whole egg for an extra gross, creepy, spooky look. It is up to you. We're gonna keep unwrapping them, see how they all came out. It seems like the Hulk smash approach might have been the right one to like really break open that egg. Because this one's not super creepy, although the outside looks great. So this one is one we pop back in, and that is peel, and that has a really green color. So it's up to you which way you want to go. If you want just like a little bit of crackle, a lot of crackle, just Hulk smash, it'll crackle better. Or just pop the whole thing in there and be extra spooky. All right, our next step, now that we have some creepy, different colored green eggs, is that we're going to slice them in half. And this is why you do not want to Hulk smash your egg accidentally, because I definitely ruined the structural integrity of some of them. And then you're just going to pop out your yolk. And see, it doesn't have that like green ring. It's because we took it off the heat and let it just cook at temp instead of boiling the whole time. Just going to pop out that yolk. Then set it to the side and repeat. All right, so all of our egg yolks are out. And now we're gonna add in 3 tablespoons of mayo. So you can either grab a tablespoon or you can eyeball it and do it to taste. If you're like, I love mayo, add more mayo. If you're like, I hate mayo, put less, but you still need some sort of creamy liquid to make it mixable and the right consistency. So you either have to make it up with mustard, Worcestershire sauce, something else that's savory of your choosing. The cool thing about deviled eggs is you kind of expand it however you want, wherever you want, to make it your own. So that's a generous 3 tablespoons. I like mayo. And then about a tablespoon and a half of mustard. And I'm going a little bit lighter because I do not like mustard as much. And then half a tablespoon or a teaspoon and a half. It's the same measurement, depends on what spoon you're using. Worcestershire sauce. And now you're going to mix it together. And it's easier to mix it with a fork because you kind of chop it up a little. You can add a couple drops of food coloring. You can either make them like a red or maybe more of an orange because red is hard to get. Or green to keep with our gross rotten egg kind of feel. So we're gonna go with green. And now you're just gonna scoop it back into the eggs. Now we're gonna sprinkle it with some paprika. And again, to taste, I like paprika, so I'm trying not to go crazy heavy, but reasonably heavy. If you're like, I don't like paprika, try something else. And some poppy seeds to keep with our spooky theme. And these are all set.
So for the Rice Krispie Treat brains, first we're going to need about 6 cups of Rice Krispie Treats, 3 tablespoons of butter, about 10 ounces of marshmallows. They can be mini, big, we got the mini ones. Cooking spray so they don't stick. Red gel so we can have the blood, and red food coloring. So first thing we want to do when we're starting our Rice Krispies, we have our pan. We're going to hit the sides of the pan with a little bit of cooking spray. That way it'll be easier for cleanup because otherwise it'll be this gooey, sticky nightmare. So that. So next step, we're going to melt the butter. So we have our 3 tablespoons of butter. So we're just going to plop it in there. Turn off the stove on medium heat. And let it melt for a second. It won't take very long. So once the butter is melted, the next thing you're going to do is we're going to put in the marshmallows. Stir frequently so it doesn't stick and you end up with like a glob monster. Heat this until it is melted, stirring frequently. I'm melting! So now that our marshmallows have melted, we're going to give it a few drops of food coloring to give it a nice grainy type of a color. A few more drops, but it is pretty hard when you're working with red to actually make red. It likes to stay a slimy pink color.
Also good for brains.
That is very true. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to stir in the cereal. So we have 6 cups of the crispy rice. Stir it in nice and slow. So that way it gets coated. So once you have the Rice Krispies all nice and coated with the butter and marshmallow mixture, you want to make sure you turn the heat off. And then we're going to take it off the heat for our next step. All right, now that we're ready for surgery, we're going to put on gloves to keep our hands from getting super goopy and gross. And we're going to spray our hands with Pam. Nice this in here. Okay, so next step. Spray the pan down with this cooking spray, and also the knife with the cooking spray because we're going to use that in a minute. Thank you. So now we're going to scoop out about 1/4 of a cup of our Rice Krispie mixture. You can measure it or you can just kind of eyeball it. Measure with your heart. And we're going to take a handful of it and shape it into full. And then leave it and use our spray coated knife to make a little grain-like indent. And it's okay if it's not. And then it should look something like this. So once you formed all of your brains and you put your brains in the pan, we're gonna set them aside to cool for like 10-15 minutes. Okay, so now that our brains have been sitting a bit to cool, our next step that we're going to do is we're going to take our red writing gel and just drizzle a little bit over all the brains to make a little impression of blood. Drizzle a little bit of icing over all our brains. You can use as much or little as you want. Just kind of a nice, gooey impression to make it extra gross. Okay, so now that we have our icing drizzled all over, we're all done. So now you can channel your inner zombie and munch on all the brains you want. So now that your spooky snacks are all complete, we hope you have a
happy Halloween!
Support public libraries. Like, share, and subscribe for more great videos.